Well, it's going to be wet, everybody. When I say wet, I mean it's going to be really, really wet. Just have a look at this forecast for the Gold Coast.
Oh, come on!
Over the next few days. Our game, of course, is on Saturday. You can see 3 to 50 millimetres of rain on Saturday. Look at the day before, 100 millimetres of rain on the Friday. The Thursday, it looks like the Brisbane-Geelong game may get cancelled and moved to round 3, where both those teams have a bye in round 3, which would seem to make sense, given that the cyclone looks like it's going to hit on the Thursday. So it looks like we're going to avoid that, but we will have the aftermath of it and a lot of rain. Look at all that. 60 millimetres of rain on the Thursday, 100 millimetres of rain on the Friday, and 3 to 50 millimetres of rain on the Saturday. I hope the drainage is good at People's First Stadium because they're going to need it.
Oh, it's wet.
If you haven't subscribed to this channel, by the way, please consider subscribing. It only takes 1 second to click the subscribe button. About 80% of the people watching this have not subscribed to the channel. It helps me. It helps the YouTube algorithm. It will ensure the videos get sent directly to your feed, and it will allow me to get a bigger audience and produce more and better content as the season goes on. So please consider doing that. How will this affect our lineup? How will it affect the game? Is the drainage good there? I don't know. We'll find out.
This is going to get ugly. Real ugly.
Will we go the 2 rucks? I don't think we should go the 2 ruck setup. I don't think Bryan and Draper should both be picked if it's going to be, conditions that are a once a year sort of type conditions. It's a deluge. There's no point going in with too tall a lineup, even if it's a strategic. A strategic decision that we want 2 rucks during the year. You've got to obviously pick the team for the game, and there's no point going overboard with that. So it does worry me a little bit. Gold Coast did play very well in a couple of games last year up in the slippery conditions in Darwin, where they play a couple of home games here. They like the wet, slippery conditions up there. They smashed Geelong up there. They won the other game up there against whoever it was. They like it when it's a bit slippery and wet. It does get a bit wet and rainy this time of year up there in southeast Queensland. So I think that definitely does help the Gold Coast, which is not great for us. We don't play particularly well in the wet. We never really have. But it's not an excuse. Both teams still have to play under the same conditions. But it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult for us. I think it's going to be a bit of a slog up there. It definitely favours the Gold Coast style of play. I think as well, the way Damien Hardwick likes to coach, his teams are kind of suited to the wet weather, that sort of chaos football that he introduced at Richmond, where you're not really playing to a structure, but you're more playing to a system. And I think he definitely wants to try to implement that sort of, or has been trying to implement that sort of system at the Gold Coast as well. So we're going to have to adapt to the conditions. I remember last season, the game against Melbourne, it did my head in. We kept on bombing the ball into the forward 50 time and time again.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
And I reckon there would have been, and the reason I bring up that game against Melbourne at the MCG would have been about round 16, 17, something like that. The reason I bring that up is because that game was played in very, very wet conditions. And we kept on bombing the ball into the forward line, and there would have been 16 players in the forward line from both teams combined on nearly every time the ball went into the forward 50. And Melbourne had a wide open forward line. I remember they got a couple of goals over the top. Pickett, I think, got a couple of goals into this wide open 50. I don't know why we didn't alter our tactics in that match. It does worry me that Brad Scott, who I do rate as a pretty good coach, and I think he knows what he's doing, can be a little bit conservative with his tactics, doesn't always like to change things up the way he should. So I hope if it's going to be wet like this, we're not just bombing it into a forward line that's got 25,000 players in it. We're going to need to be smarter than that.
No, it would be a suicide mission.
I don't know if it's going to rain during the game. It probably will, but nevertheless, it's going to be wet all over the ground. That's just a fact of life. So it's going to be a wet weather game, whether it's actually raining or not. So it's just something we're going to have to adapt to. And it's something that we're going to have to, I think anyway, have a more open forward line, maybe a smaller forward line. I don't know what the selection's going to be like, but I probably wouldn't go with the 2 rucks. What would you guys do? And I'd probably go with a smaller team. So the selection will be crucial, I think, on Thursday night when the team gets announced as to exactly how we select this team. what they might do if it is very, very wet on the day, they can always select the team as they normally would if it was a dry game. They've got the 3 emergencies, and just seeing how the conditions go, they could maybe take Brian out of the side and maybe swap him for someone like an Archie Roberts. I think that could possibly make sense given the conditions. But we're definitely going to have to be smart the way we play this match. Well, one thing that I've brought up in previous videos, and I have mentioned, is that Essendon under Brad Scott has relied quite a bit on goals through system, but not through chaos. And by that I mean we've been a reasonable team in scoring in terms of being able to get goals through our structure. There was a game I remember against the Blues a couple of years ago where we won. It was the first game on the King's Birthday Eve, and we scored 11 goals for the match only, and only one of those goals was from general play. Every other goal was from a mark. And this isn't unusual with the way Essendon play, just given that we've been very, very focused on structure, which I guess is fine, but we do need to generate more goals from chaos and be a little bit more unpredictable. And I think the fact that Kako is coming into the side, and you'd think he'd be good for a goal a match this season, which also frees up someone like Gresham. And we saw against the Cats on the weekend that, you know, getting goals through chaos might be a little bit more prevalent this year, and I think we need to do it. We can't rely on system, and that's going to be very, very, very important in this game against the Gold Coast, because we're going to have to generate a lot of goals through chaos. System is going to be very, very difficult to execute. In fact, it's going to be almost impossible to execute. Just kicking it in there to, you know, key forwards when there's 25,000 players in the back line is not going to get the job done. We're going to have to knock the ball forward at all costs. Often kick to grass is what I like to say, kick to grass, run onto the ball, try to generate opportunities through moving the ball forward. It's going to be one of those unusual games where tactically it's not going to be played in the same way you would think that a normal game would, especially if those forecasts are correct. I think I heard some predictions that there could be 300 or 400 millilitres of rain, or millimetres of rain. I think that's exaggerating it. You often get a lot of exaggerations from the media with this sort of thing with the weather. I don't know if it's going to be that much, but it definitely is going to be wet. So what do you guys think? How are we going to approach this game? Would you pick the 23 that you would normally pick going into a dry game and just use the emergencies? Would you drop Nick Bryan? Would you perhaps drop someone like Harrison Jones, who I think is definitely in our best 23? But I'm just thinking these conditions do look to be not normal wet weather conditions. They look to be quite extraordinary wet weather conditions. Now, maybe the worst of it will be past us by Saturday, but this is southeast Queensland in late February, early March, and it does get very, very wet up there. I'm just hoping my plane flight up there doesn't get cancelled. We'll have to wait and see. I've planned this for a little while now, so there's probably going to be some fork in the road that's going to stop me getting up there, but I hope that this game, well, I'm pretty sure the game will go ahead. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But yeah, what do you guys think? How are we going to approach this game? This is going to be a very, very interesting tactical game, and I think a lot is going to be on the coach. I'm one of those people that think generally coaches are overrated and it is a player's game, but this is one of those games that the coaches can definitely have an influence. And given Damien Hardwick's propensity for chaos football at Richmond, knock the ball on, create opportunities through pressure and chaos, this is something we're going to have to be very, very wary of. Otherwise, we could be playing right into the hands of the Gold Coast. So the team will get announced in a couple of days' time. It'll be very, very interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. About 80% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, and it only takes 1 second to subscribe, and it will help the YouTube algorithm, and it will help me out as well. So that would be fantastic. And as always, go Bombers and have a great day.